Welcome to the tutorial video series for the Integrated Environmental Control Model, or IECM. These videos are designed to show you various aspects of the IECM to help you understand how it works and how you can use it in your modeling efforts. You can find more information, including additional videos and our user manual and detailed technical documentation, on our website at www.iecm-online.com. This video will show you how to create and use custom coals. Note that your custom coal does not have to literally be a coal. We've had a number of people that have used this mechanism to model other fuels such as biomass. We assume that you are familiar with creating and saving sessions, and that you are comfortable with basic navigation in the model. Let's begin by creating a new pulverized coal session. Since we're only using this session to look at coals, we don't need to configure anything. So, we'll start by going directly to the fuel section of Set Parameters to see how the information about the coal is organized. The Coal Properties screen shows the current fuel and its composition. Appalachian Medium Sulfur is the default coal, and its rank is bituminous. The rank is calculated automatically based on the coal composition. Looking at the coal composition, the total at the bottom is the sum of all the percentages. The total should be 100%, or very close to it. At the bottom of the screen, you will see a reminder that uncertainty should only be used here for batch processing, where the entire composition can be specified at once. The default cost could vary independently. However, it may make more sense to vary it on the cost screen, since that screen allows you to override the default cost. The Ash Properties screen shows us a more detailed composition of the minerals found in the ash. The total at the bottom is the sum of all percentages, similar to the Coal Properties screen. However, this screen also includes a value called Other in the composition. This value, as the name suggests, is the percentage of any minerals not listed above in the composition. It is automatically adjusted to bring the total up to 100%. This screen has the same note as the Coal Properties screen. It does not make sense to vary these components independently. Accurate accounting of the ash properties is used mainly for tracking certain trace elements and for predicting the performance and cost of an electrostatic precipitator if this control technology is to be used for particulate control. The auxiliary gas screen allows you to specify the composition of natural gas to be used in an auxiliary boiler if you have one. Mercury is listed on its own screen due to both its importance as a regulated pollutant and its varied speciation. The mercury speciation fractions in the coal can be specified, along with the dry basis concentration. The cost of the coal is shown on the cost screen. The default cost from the Coal Properties screen will be used here by default. However, you can uncheck the calc box and provide your own value if you so desire. Now that we've seen how the fuel section is organized, let's go back to Coal Properties and see how we can select a different coal. You could edit the information on these screens directly, but if you want to use one of the other IECM default coals, or if you want to save your own coal for use in another session, you will need to use a fuel database. If you look at the top of this screen, you will see a button labeled "Click here to retrieve a coal from the database." Click this button to access the database tool. Before we go any further, let's take a quick look at the controls available in this tool. At the top of the window, you will find a drop-down menu labeled Mode. This menu allows you to choose between View Mode, where you can look up existing coals, and Add/Edit Mode, where you can edit the coal you've selected, or add a new one. Beneath that, you will find a couple of controls that allow you to select a coal. The database menu allows you to choose between the databases that are currently open. Model Default Fuels.db is a read-only database that contains the IECM default fuels. UserFuels.edb is a database that is automatically created by the IECM to store user-defined fuels. This database may or may not exist in your installation. If it does exist, it will be opened automatically and appear in this list. You can manage the content of the database menu using the database buttons on the right. The Create button allows you to create a new fuel database. Let's click that button to create a new database. This is a fairly standard file creation dialog. However, there is one thing that you should be aware of. Some versions of the IECM have a typo in the three-letter extension of the default file name. As you can see from the File Type menu, the proper extension for an IECM fuel database is EDB. However, in some versions of the IECM, the default file name will be untitled.rdb. If you type a name without an extension, it will do the right thing. But if you use the RDB extension, you will need to show all files when you reopen your fuel database. Otherwise, you won't be able to see it. I'm going to call this database My Fuels and make sure that I'm in the right place, and I'll click Save to create it. So now, if I look at the database menu, I see my new database. I'm not going to select it yet. We'll come back to that later. Continuing with the database buttons, the next button, Open, allows you to open a database that you've previously created or that someone has shared with you. Open databases are shared between sessions. However, all databases are closed when you exit the IECM. Clicking the Open button gives you a fairly standard Open dialog window. Notice the Read Only checkbox in the lower left corner. This allows you to open a database read-only if you don't want to accidentally change it. I don't need to open a database right now, so I'm going to click Cancel to get back to the database window. The next database button is the Close button. This button closes the current database. It is currently grayed out because we're looking at the Model Default Fuels database, which cannot be closed. If I select the database I just created, My Fuels, the Close button is enabled, so I can close that database if I'm done with it and don't want to see it in the list anymore. Let's go back to the Model Default Fuels database for now. The last database button is Show Path. Sometimes you may want to share a database with someone else, but you don't know where it is. That shouldn't be a problem for a database that you explicitly created. But if you have saved fuels in the User Fuels database created for you by the IECM, you may not know where to find it. Clicking the Show Path button brings up a window that shows you the full path to the current database, in this case, Model Default Fuels. In case you're not familiar with paths, the components are separated by backslashes. So the Model Default Fuels database is located in this PC Program Files, IECM Interface 11.5.0.5, IntDB. And here is our database, Model Default Fuels. I'm going to close these windows and go back to the database window. Looking at the coal selection section, beneath the database, we find the name of the currently selected coal. In View mode, the name is a drop-down menu which allows you to choose one of the coals defined in the current database. Appalachian Low Sulfur is currently selected since it is the first coal in the list. The properties of the selected coal are shown below the name. You can use this menu to switch between coal properties and ash properties. These are the properties shown on the coal properties and ash properties screens. At this point, while you're in view mode, you can click the OK button to use the selected coal in the IECM. The OK button will be grayed out if there is no selected coal, which can happen if the selected database is empty. You can also close this window by clicking the Cancel button. This does not undo any changes that you have made to the databases. It simply allows you to close the window without importing a coal. Now that we've seen how the database window works, we're ready to add a custom fuel. Note that, although we're calling this coal, it does not have to literally be coal. It could be a blended fuel or biomass, for example. So, although the IECM will treat it like a coal, you do have some flexibility. If you only plan to use your custom fuel in this one session, you can simply enter its properties in the Fuel section of Set Parameters. However, if you're going to want to reuse it, you'll need to enter it in the Database window and save it in a database. For this example, let's assume that we have secured a deal on Black Mesa coal for $22.50 per delivered short ton. We will need to enter the ultimate analysis and the as-received moisture content, which we have here. If this was close to another coal, we might want to pull up that coal before we start to save some typing. But in this case, it doesn't really matter what we start with. So we're going to go back up to the Mode selector and change the mode to Add/Edit. Before we go any further, let's take a look at the coal buttons. The first button in this section, labeled Add/Save, allows you to save your coal in the database. If a coal by that name already exists, you will be asked for confirmation before it is overwritten. If that coal does not already exist in the database, it will be added. This button will be grayed out if you cannot save the coal for some reason, typically either because the selected database is read-only or the component percentages don't add up to 100%. It is only available in edit mode. The next button, Default Ash, uses a set of default ash properties based on the rank of the coal. In some cases, you may not know the exact ash properties of your coal. This button gives you a reasonable approximation. This button is also only available in edit mode. The next button, Show Errors, is enabled when you are in edit mode, and the Add/Save button is disabled. The Show Errors button will tell you why the Add/Save button is disabled, and what you need to do to correct the problem. The last button in this section, the Delete button, is only available in view mode. If your selected database is writable, this button will delete the currently selected coal after asking you for confirmation. Note that editing or deleting a coal in your database will not affect any sessions that are currently using that coal. When you import a coal from a database, the properties of that coal are copied into your session. The session does not maintain any connection with the database. If you want your changes here to apply to previously existing sessions, you will need to open those sessions manually and either edit the affected properties directly or re-import the coal. Let's start by changing the name of the coal to Black Mesa. Then we enter the rest of the properties. Notice how the total updates as we enter the coal properties. Assuming we don't mistype something, it should be 100% when we're done. We don't have detailed ash properties for this coal, so we click Default Ash to let the IECM give us an approximation based on the coal rank. So now we're ready to save this coal. Looking at the database selector, we see that the Model Default Fuels database is currently selected. We don't want to save it there, and in fact the IECM will not allow us to save it there. Notice how the Add/Save button is grayed out. If we click Show Errors at this point, the IECM tells us that we are not allowed to modify the default database. Let's save this in the MyFuels database we created earlier. Now that we've chosen a suitable database, the Add/Save button is enabled, and we can click it to save our coal for future use. The IECM confirms that the coal has been saved. If I didn't want to use this coal right now, I could click Cancel to close the window without changing the coal used in my session. This does not undo any changes that I've made to the database. It simply cancels the process of importing a coal into the current session. In this case, I want to use this coal right now, so I'm going to go back to View mode. The coal that I just saved is selected, and the OK button is enabled. This is the coal I want to use, so I'll click OK to import it into my session. The IECM confirms that the coal has been imported, and we can see that we are now using our new Black Mesa coal. One of the advantages of saving this coal in a database is that we can use it in future sessions without having to type everything in again. I've restarted the IECM and created a new pulverized coal plant to show you how to do that. We start by going to Coal Properties in the Fuel section of Set Parameters. Click the button at the top to bring up the database dialog. If your database is listed here, select it. In this case, the coal is saved in a different database, and since I have restarted the IECM since I saved it, that database is no longer open. So I click the Open button to open my database. I locate the database, I'm already in the right folder, select it, and click Open to open it. Now I can go back to the database menu and select it. And now that I've selected my database, I can choose a coal from it. This database currently has only one coal, the Black Mesa coal that I just entered. Now that I've selected my coal, I click OK to import it. The IECM confirms that the coal has been imported, and here it is. This concludes our video on creating custom coals in the IECM. We hope that this video has been helpful. To learn more, we invite you to check out the other video tutorials and documentation on our website at www.iecm-online.com.